that we're just about live. So it's really nice. I think we'll just give it a few minutes before I get you to do any introduction, just to give the last people time to actually get in. Um, Let me say a couple of housekeeping things up front. The first thing is, remember, this is a webinar. So if you please feel free to ask any questions if you'd like to. If you've got any questions, please put them in the wherever it is that you've got the chat box. And it may be that I need to occasionally do this, or Glenn needs to occasionally do this because I might need a magnifying glass. But if you've got something important you'd like to ask, please do put it in there and we'll do our best to read them and then respond. So that would be great. So welcome. Today is rather different from me because normally on these webinars, we invite to have in conversation with me one of our clients. And this is a double whammy because some years ago, Glenn actually was a client and then decided over time to step away and to become a consultant in his own right. And he is now a very close associate with the Living Leader. He has, I can't remember, Glenn, when did I first meet you at that breakfast in London that you came to? When was it?
2018. It was November 2018 in the Gherkin.
Oh, wow. So it's
Yeah,
quite some time ago. And
indeed.
luckily you came to the breakfast and you went then wanting to go through our program. You were well supported by your boss, Lucy Darch, who was already absolutely committed to the program and the impact it could have. So that was a bit special that you were sort of kicked off well. And I think very quickly, you didn't just go through the program, you then became a trainer. You delivered quite a lot of programs within your own company. And I think probably you'll tell us why you then decided to step away and think it would be really good to actually do this more intensely or more frequently, however you choose to look at it. But just so that everybody knows, Glenn has become an absolutely key part of the Living Leader. He's delivered programs for us in so many different countries. I think quite a lot in America, in Germany, in I can't remember, various places around the world, as well as a lot in the UK. In fact, I think probably last year you almost didn't get time to turn around. You were absolutely back to back delivering. Oh, and you did virtual in New Zealand as well, didn't you? So there's been a lot of programs. So this is going to be very much Glenn sharing some of his journey, but also hopefully giving you all some insights and recognizing that on here, on this webinar, we have some people who are clients already. We have some people who are trainers. And we have some people who actually probably don't know a lot about what we do. So, Glenn, in what you share as we go through, it would be amazing if you can just share a few insights as well that people might be able to say, oh, I'm going to have a go at that, or I'm going to try. So, a few things on the way through would be amazing. So, Glenn, welcome and thank you for giving your time. Over to you.
Thanks, Penny. Well, first and foremost, it's a real privilege to be doing this. Thanks for having me. And thanks for being in my life as well, because without a doubt, it's had a huge impact to the point where, I would say to people these days that I absolutely love what I do. And just explore that for a minute. Love's a big word. So if you were to ask me, Glenn, do you love your wife? And I turn around and say, yeah, I like her a lot. That kind of would put it into context, wouldn't it? So I absolutely love what I do. Why do I love what I do? Well, I feel for probably the first time in my career, and it took, a long time to get to this place, I feel completely connected with my purpose. And that, I think, for leaders is very important. My purpose is to inspire people to be the best version of themselves possible so that they in turn can thrive and the people around them thrive. That's what I'm all about these days. And I haven't always been in that place. My background is sales. I was a highly competitive, driven, winning salesperson. and it was all about winning. It was all about the customer. And when I took my first step into leadership, I was promoted. I was a successful salesperson, promoted to become a sales leader. Because I'd been a success, I thought if I get my team to work the way I did, that they'll be a success. So I forced things on them, like my territory plan, how I managed my territory, what I did in a typical week. I went beyond that. I even started targeting them on some of the things that I did. So it's only now when I reflect back, I very much realized that I was about controlling people more and driving them. And the opposite of where I am today, I want to inspire people. And for me, that's about giving people freedom. And absolutely, you need some of these processes and procedures and things in place. But if you don't engage with your people, you're not going to go very far. You've got people, products and services, and performance and profits. People are at the start of that. Yet many businesses get overly focused on their profits, their performance, their KPIs, their targets, and they forget about the people. And if I'm absolutely honest, I was probably overly focused on the outputs at the expense of some of the people that worked for me. And I'll always remember when I was fortunate to be a delegate on your program, which was after that great meeting at the Gherkin. The first time I went through the program was in 2019. And I now ask the same question that you asked me is, who here in the room thinks it's their job to motivate their people and the people around them? And 90% of the time, most of the people in the room, if not everybody, straight away put their hand up. And I follow on with a question. I just say, what happens when you're not there? And I let them process that for a few minutes, and you can see the light bulbs coming on. And then I follow on and say something along the lines of, it can't possibly be our job to motivate our people. What we need to do is create an environment where people motivate themselves. Motivation has to come from within. We can't force it on people, but as leaders, we can create an environment where people feel motivated and inspired to do things. So that's what I hope I do these days. I've been involved with 65 programs, so somewhere between 620 and 650 people that I've taken through the program now, or be involved on a program with. Hopefully, I'm inspiring people as I do that, Penny.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. And this is some of the scary things when you think about it. You describe how you were as a salesperson. I think that's very typical in organizations of people in sales. They absolutely feel that they need to keep driving performance. And I still remember that we had a regional manager come through the program from one of the retail organizations we work with. This is years ago. And he was absolutely like that. But the challenge for him was his region was the highest performing region in the company. No question. It was always came top of the pops. And he went through, like you did, the program and suddenly thought, oh my God, here I am believing that I need to motivate the guys. I need to give them the targets. I need to show them how to do it because I care for them. And when he learned this and decided he wanted to change, he was almost panic stricken, thinking, but they're not going to get the results without me. He literally went into almost panic mode. And to be honest, the results plateaued. He still came top, but it maybe was marginal. But after about 2 to 3 months, performance suddenly went whoopee, even higher than they ever had before. And he realized that his commitment in wanting to motivate them was actually what's holding them back, because he was teaching them how to not to think for themselves.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting, that's probably what you went through. So tell me, when you, having been through the program and having decided that you needed to change, how easy did you find it? And what was your journey like from then on?
In terms of changing to step out from a commercial role to come and do this.
No, to step away from being more of a manager and more of a leader. What were some of the challenges you went through endeavoring to change your behavior, which, let's be honest, had to be quite significant?
Yeah, and there was so much to address. to be honest about it, because when I realized I was about drive and control, that there was so many things on the program that just really resonated with me and made absolute sense. And I think the thing that really struck me was the great leaders choose to be authentic. And I think in many of my roles, some of the organizations where I've worked, I didn't feel I could be Glenn. I couldn't be my authentic self. And that, I believe, held me back. I mean, I'll maybe touch on my limiting beliefs later on, which also held me back. But definitely, I didn't feel I could be authentic. And I think the key thing with that is you have to be prepared and willing and wanting to connect with people at a human level. And we don't do that in business. Hi, I'm Glenn. I'm married to Louise. I've been married for 25 years. I've got a daughter, Amy. I like to play golf and love football. And that you get it at a superficial level. But when you are willing to get a bit deeper than that and really get to know people within your teams, what makes them tick, I think that's very, very empowering. I mean, honestly, of all the programs that I've been involved with, there's not once where I haven't found something in common with somebody. I haven't been surprised. I've been surprised by something rather, and I've had an assumption that's been removed. And that's what happens every single time that we take people through and we get to do these introductions. So that was my first choice, was to be more authentic and share more with my
Can I just
team.
can I just come in and interrupt you there, because I would like you to share with people what exactly do you mean when you say an assumption was removed?
Well, I would assume certain things about people in terms of past experiences I've had about. Well, let me give you. Can I give you a real life story example of how this happened? So I used to work for a regional company that sold fire detection systems, and we had 8 people in our sales team, and we were a really strong, tight knit team. Now, the general manager decided he was going to parachute number 9 salesperson in, and this was a chap called Colin. Okay. Now, Colin came into our team. Quite frankly, he was full of himself. He would say things to us like, you don't even know what selling is. I'm going to blow your targets out of the water. I'm going to be the best salesperson that you have ever seen. Now, what happened as a team when Colin came in with that attitude, many people would think that as a team of 8, we would get together. Now, when we were a tight team, let's just say we had somebody looking after an area, Teesside, and I would have to drive from Newcastle south. If I went through Teesside and I saw a new building going up that might need a fire alarm system, I'd write the details down for my colleague and I'd pass them the information, because it could potentially lead to a sale. Now, when Colin came along, going to be the best salesman that we've ever seen, I thought, I'll bloody show who Colin is, who's the best salesperson is. So I put my arms around my customers, my territory, and I become laser focused on just me and just my area. And that togetherness that 8 of us had in that team was completely destroyed. Now, here's the thing with this story. Colin didn't actually last very long. And I'm sure when he went to the next company, he'd be the best thing since sliced bread again. But when we got to know Colin after 4, 5, 6 months, what we found out was that he had one of the lowest levels of confidence of a salesperson that I've ever met. He had he didn't believe he could hit the targets that the general manager had set, and he thought they were unachievable. And his confidence was rock bottom. If only we'd taken the time to get to know Colin at a more human level, perhaps he could have joined that 8 and he would have been the 9th, and we would have put our arms around him as well. So that's an example how assumptions of somebody, I thought, really arrogant. I'll show him who's the bloody best. And it took a long time for our team of 8, after Colin had left. It took us a long time to get back together.
Perfect example. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting, but I thought it was really important that you could share with people what you meant by how an assumption can blow things apart. So, Glenn, please continue. I just thought that was important to have that little diversion.
No, absolutely. And just on introductions and getting to know people, we think we know people. That's another thing about the assumptions we make. We think we know them. And one program I remember I ran with a top team, and it really stands out because a number of these people had worked together for 10 years. And as we went through the introductions, one of the team shared that they were very lonely in life. And these guys who'd been working together for 10 years, they didn't have a clue. And he opened up in a way which was really, I mean, there was some vulnerability there. He was authentic. There was a bit of emotion. But his colleagues were able to put their arms around him and they understood him at a much, much deeper level. And they got some insight as to why some of the things that had been going on had been going on. And if they just got to know each other a lot earlier at that deeper level, they could have saved themselves a huge bunch of work, perhaps.
Yeah, it is. It really is interesting that. And I think that what you're touching on there is getting to know people, how really important it is. And it never ceases to amaze me how, when we run programs, teams that seem to have known each other for a long time find they don't actually know each other very well at all. And when you've run several what we call open programs, which is when you get people from all different backgrounds, by lunchtime on day one, you can see that a team has formed. It's amazing. And they can't believe it. And so there's no question it's really challenging. And one of the things I would just like to share with people now is, if you're taking somebody new into your company and you decide that you want to do a handover time, be really, really careful about that if you keep the existing person in place, um, and think, oh, it'll be really good if they can show this person now how to do what we do and hand over, and you've got the two of them working together for a week or a month, whatever. I will be put my cards on the table right now and say, I think the potential for it to be the kiss of death is very high, because the individual who's already there is going to share all their perceptions of each person on their team. Oh, well, you're going to really need to keep your eye on this person, because unless you watch them, they will not keep to their targets. You're going to need to check this person's work because they can be a bit shoddy. This person always is the highest performer, and they will share with you all of their perceptions. The risk is you then believe it. And what you then look for is evidence to say that what they've shared with you is true. And I'm sure all of you will have been in situations where you've probably seen a team have a new boss, and that team maybe has been slightly underperforming. And a new boss comes in without that handover period. And suddenly a team that was seen to be poor performance suddenly begin to perform amazingly well. And it's nothing to do with the team, it's to do with the manager. So just be really, really careful about what somebody tells you about other individuals. I had experiences that sometimes a CEO, before I was going to run a top team program, would say, it's really important I share with you about everybody. And they'd want to share with me about each person. Oh, this finance director doesn't believe in leadership or personal development. You're going to have a real problem with him on the program. Now, I would never, ever, I'd show interest for the CEO. I'd never look at those notes again or the names. I knew, even with everything that I learn and teach, if I went into that program thinking, oh my God, that's the finance director. Oh, wow, he's going to be difficult. I would look for him to be difficult. I'd create it. And so just be very careful about assumptions that other people feed you. It's your choice whether you choose to pick them up or not. So, Glenn, tell me a little more about your journey, because there's so much that you have shared over the years about the things you've taken from the program and the impact that it's had on your life. Just share whatever you think you'd like to share, giving as many examples as you can of real life.
Okay, yeah, some great examples. I think the easiest or the simplest model, not the easiest, it's far from easy. Two very different things. The simplest model that was a game changer for me was understanding that when something happens to us, we've then got a choice as to how we react to it. Now, I used to be the world's worst worrier, an overthinker, and I would overthink things to the nth degree. It was ridiculous, to the point where I'd lost the house, my marriage had broken down. I was, it was ridiculous. And that model, we call it stimulus response. I use it in so many different ways. So it helped me with overthinking, stopping overthinking through my awareness. I'm aware of what's happening. And then I ask myself a question, Glenn, if you knew you could think in a different way so you have a more positive day, what might you choose to do today? If you knew you could think more positively so that you had better use of your time, what could you do differently to make sure that that happens? So I now challenge myself and widen that gap. I don't always get it right. Sometimes, I can wander on in my thoughts for a couple of minutes, but it's really, really, because I would lose an hour easy thinking about stuff. But I don't do that anymore. So stimulus response is so powerful. I mean, I'm going to talk about my daughter, right? So our biggest job in leadership, arguably, is with our kids. For those of us that have got kids, and Amy, I absolutely love Amy. She's such a great kid, really talented, and I wanted to do and be her very best. And when she did her mock A levels, for those of you who are not from the UK, that's the last set of exams we do before we finish our formal school education. We do a mock set of A levels, and then we do the exams themselves. She came back with an A star for art, and she failed her business and her English. Now, I had to widen that gap. The stimulus was this result. What I would have done years back would say, God, you young lady need to concentrate on your bloody English and your business. What I did was I said, Amy, do me a favor, go and get your art portfolio, will you? And she brought it upstairs and we lay it on the spare bed. And some of these bits of art are A1 size, some are bigger. And we went over the art and we looked at it for a good half an hour. I heaped praise and appreciation on it. I was fascinated by, how do you draw a glass of water like that? It looks like a bloody photograph. How do you draw someone's eyeball like that? I heaped praise and appreciation on it. I didn't mention her English and her business. And after that half hour, when I said I'm going to have to get back to work, she said, and you know what, Dad? I really want to excel and study my illustration and art. So I'm going to really knuckle down in my English and my business. I never had to tell her about it. And she went away, took the responsibility, absolutely owned it. And last summer, she finished with a first class honours degree in illustration. I wanted to tell her, there's still my biggest challenge in leadership. What she does next, I would like to tell her, but she's got to find her own way.
So how many questions have you now got written down? Remember to ask this question. Remember to ask that one.
Yeah. Well, the thing now, the problem she's got now in life, Penny, and I genuinely think many people do this, and you fall into your career by accident. And whether or not I did, I don't know. And I told you about my sense of purpose now. It took me to the age of 49, 50 to discover that. Now, what Amy's currently doing is she's working part-time in a restaurant because she needs money. And she's also working for one of her friends in a jewelry business because she needs money. Now, what I want to tell her is I don't want her to, in 5 years' time, discover that she's 5 years of her life's gone and okay, she's now working in this jewelry business and she's more established, but it's all been back because of the money. And that's taken her in that direction. What I want her to do is think about how can she currently use her time to find herself an opening in a business where she could use what she's passionate about, which is her art and her illustration. So I'm having to ask her empowering questions. Amy, if you knew you could use the 5 days a week that you've got, how on earth could you use that to make sure that you get yourself a position doing something that you love. Something's just popped up into
I
the
know.
chat there
I'm
from Vaughan.
endeavouring to read it. It's the wonderful Vaughan who joins us on practically everything. He doesn't miss any of them. That's from the States. Besides, one of my favourite quotes: "Stories have the power to connect us, inspire us, and shape our perspectives. They can teach us valuable lessons, provide us with insights into different." Right. I don't know where it then goes. Probably
Yeah,
more of
absolutely. I think the power of storytelling, Vaughan, is massive, and yeah, it really helps to bring some of this stuff alive. It really does. Um, that's big on the screen now. We do make these assumptions and place masks on people and ourselves, really allowing versus real true connection. That's what I really love about Living Leader. Challenge to the masks, absolutely. Um, Understanding people at a deeper level.
yeah.
Yeah, stories have the power to connect us. Absolutely, absolutely.
So, Glenn, tell me a little bit more. It's great. I absolutely agree with you. Stimulus and response is key. It makes me laugh a little bit. How old is Amy? Because I've seen how talented she is. I've seen stuff you've put up on LinkedIn. She is amazing. So,
Thank
how
you.
old is she?
She's just turned 21. Yeah.
God,
So
I didn't know.
fresh out of university and yeah, working 5 days a week. So that's what I'm trying to get her to think about. How can she carve some time out? She knew she could carve some time out to get herself into a position where she can do something that she really loves. What would she need to do differently? And
Yeah,
last night she said, Dad, tomorrow, can we have a look at how we make my CV stand out from the crowd? So I'll have to come up with another load of questions because I'm not going to tell her. So yeah,
I know. I'm surprised she's not coming back at you. I can still remember, because obviously, if you can find out what the assumption is that's holding them back, it's even more powerful, and you get the questions as helpful as they can be. But I can still remember, I think it was Lucy, my eldest daughter, and I was trying to get her to think something through. And so I'd be saying, "So, darling, what are you assuming about this?" And she went, "Mum, will you stop asking me what I'm assuming and just tell me what to do?" God.
yeah,
I'll never forget that. Really interesting. But here we are worried about it. She's 21. I didn't find out where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do till the age of 50. So got a few years to
similar for me. Yeah, 50 for me as well. Pen. I don't know whether it's a maturity thing or whether we become financially more stable at that age or whatever. But it can't all just be about chasing the money, and that's what I'm trying to get her to really think about. How does she use her passion, her talent to kind of get on in life? Because when you do that, you get into what's called flow state. And when you're in your flow state, it's natural. It comes easier. It's never easy, but it comes easier for you. And when you can say something like, I love what I do, I wonder how many people actually can say that.
And I agree. I think that's rare. The only thing, it's almost a case of getting the balance right. And I can't even begin to answer this question, but I do believe to an extent things happen when they're meant to happen. And sometimes you need some experiences on the way through that when you look back and think, do you know, I could have done this earlier, but would I have been able to do what I do right now if I hadn't had those experiences? I bitterly regret that I didn't design this program till the age of 50. Could I have done it before without the experiences I had? I'm not sure I could have done.
Yeah.
So it is a matter of getting the balance right. So tell me, there's a couple of other things, Glenn. I know there's a couple of other things that have had an impact on you, and you've probably got some stories to share around this. And that's the bit on the program where you talk about give get,
Mm.
because that, I have to say, was, well, you know what happened with me, you know my story, that it totally changed my life in terms of confidence. Tell me a little bit about some of the impact that had on you and how you've chosen to use it.
Yeah, and it really is empowering when you can let go of the get. And perhaps some of that helped me with my with my overthinking as well, because I used to be worried about what other people would think about X, Y, and Z. What if this, that, and the other happens? And as we know, we've got absolutely no control over that. All we can be is the best version of ourselves, and give in the best we can. When you invited me along to this session today, that model jumped out at me in my head. Okay, Glenn, if you knew you could give yourself in the best way possible so that you have a great conversation with Penny, what are you going to do to enable that to happen? And I reflected and thought about the stories I could bring along today. Christine, so
Yeah,
true, Pen.
15. Yeah. Yeah. So true, Pen. Without the learning opportunities, no matter how painful, we may not be able to express the critical messages. Yeah. And Christine, my God, you've had a few along the way. So I'm sure you'd have some powerful stories as well. So Glenn, continue some of the examples that you might have had around Give Get.
Well, I had a young lady who was going to join a course that I used to run. I used to run a course internally within the organization that I worked called Pitch Perfect. And it was a presentation training course. And I just completely stole the idea from a lady who trained me when I was as a bit younger. But it had the reputation of being a bit brutal. And it's probably not the type of course that you would run today. So there was only 4 delegates at the time, and you went into the room and you were asked to present on a business subject that you'd presented before, and you got torn apart by your peers in the room. It was videoed, you played the video back, and basically you were torn apart. Anyhow, this one girl got wind that she was going to come onto my program, and she was clearly worried about it. And the stuff she was worried about is, what if people don't like my slides? What if people don't like the message I've got? If they don't have absolute clarity as to what I'm trying to get across? And again, I'd been through the program at this point. So this was 2019. It might have been actually after we met at the Gherkin. I said to her, have a think about what you're worrying about here. Is this what you can give to the course, or is this what you want to get? And then we had the discussion that, well, you can't control the get. That's completely outside of our control. So if you knew you could prepare for this and come along in a way that you really smashed it, what could you do to make sure that happened? And it was by far the best delegate on that program. She took away the most because she was the most open-minded as well. And that's something else that's really important. If you've got that attitude of always be learning, it's never too late to learn new stuff. I think that's really important in life as well.
Yeah, I absolutely think you're right. And it is interesting. I still remember, this is going back, God, years, just come into my mind again. And I can still remember who it was. He's moved on to other companies, and I think he's been CEO for a long time. But at the time, his name is Gary Barr, and he was IT director, and I can't even remember which company he was in. But when on the program that I was running, I did the story of Give Get. He got very quiet, and then he said, I've just realized something. He said, I'm about to do a presentation, and I think it was in the next few days, to a whole load of IT directors in the retail industry, a lot of them. So it was quite a big and very important presentation. And he had got lots and lots and lots of slides to show them. And he began to think about it, and he thought, okay, so why have I put all these slides together? Why am I doing such a big presentation? And he came to the conclusion he was doing it to prove to them all the research he'd done, prove to them what a good job he'd done, how amazing he was.
Yeah.
And he said, when I really looked at it, I thought, why am I doing this? Because I want them to say, wow, he put a lot of effort into that. And he said, I began to think, what can I really give them? If I knew there's 1 or 2 things I can give them that they take away something valuable, what could I choose to give? And he phoned me afterwards. He said, I went in with 2 slides. He said, that was it. And he said, I got a feedback, very precise feedback. One of them stayed behind to give me feedback afterwards. and this is apart from what he obviously got overall later, but he said this guy stayed behind afterwards to say that is without doubt the best IT presentation I've been to. You didn't try and baffle us with science. What you did was created something really meaningful, and I took some valuable insights from this just by changing his thinking and looking at it saying, if I really knew there's things I can give. And there's another example. I can remember Tash one day, who many of you know is one of our most amazing trainers as well, although she specializes in the certified training program. And I remember when Tash would deliver a program, she phoned me up and said, look, I'm really a bit stressed about this lady who she said, and she began to tell me all the challenges that were going on. And she really wanted her to help her and get it. And she was passionate about wanting to help her. And I just very quietly said to Tash, Tash, who's taking responsibility here? And she went, oh God, I am. You know, she'd got she and that sort of combines give, get, and responsibility. And it was suddenly, oh, it's me who's taking responsibility. And I said, okay, so if you knew that you can ask her to take responsibility for these challenges, so what do you now need to do? And it was really interesting how we flipped it.
Yeah,
So,
great.
Glenn, you've got loads of other insights. I'd like you to choose what you'd like to share about some of your learnings, or what do you think people are really going to find fascinating to take away with them?
Okay. Just on your last point there around focusing on give get again, I think taking that principle into a meeting is absolutely a game changer as well. Often we go into meetings thinking about what we want to get from it, the outputs that we want. But if you can challenge yourself to go into a meeting saying, if I knew I could give something to this group here, what do I need to give to, you know, result in the best way forward for us as an organization or a team or whatever. So that's quite powerful as well, using it in meetings. There's so much stuff to that I could share with you. One of the things that really resonated with me, and this didn't, when I was on your program, it didn't land with me at the time. Okay. So this is about how we choose to think about other people. Now, I'll ask delegates on my program, how many people here believe and have got a superstar in their team? And everyone will put their hand up. Oh, I've got a superstar. Yeah, I can think who they are. Have any of you got somebody that you consider to be an average performer? And everyone, oh yeah, yeah, I've got a person who's not so good as my superstar. Okay, so you get a new project that comes along, the nice new shiny project that you need some input from your team, and you've got to move it forward quite quickly. Who do you ask? Do you ask your superstar, or do you ask the other people in your team that you don't think the same about? And this is the thing with that really landed for me, was that I had a superstar. I was giving that person all of the opportunities to prove that they were a superstar. These other poor sods over here didn't have a chance. My thinking was driving my behavior. The guy, I mean, he ended up and he's moving his career on really nicely. He's going to go great places, is going great places, but that was at the expense of the rest of the team. And I can see that now. That didn't land with me when you took me through it on the program. And that, again, it's it's different things for different people at different times of their journey. So that stands out for me.
So, how do you think you handle it where you've got the situation where you've got not a poor performer, but an average performer, and you need to help them become an outstanding performer? How would you go about it, Glenn?
Well, great question. I think that there's a couple of things. There's a phrase we use on the program a lot. What we focus our attention on grows. What we take our attention away from withers and dies. And if we look really hard for the great things that people do, we'll find it. And if we find something that, okay, you've got to address poor performance sometimes. Sometimes you might need to put some training around, some support for somebody, but that's very much at an organizational level. But as a leader, we can look to encourage and influence that person, I believe, through appreciating the good things that they do. And if we can get them, you know, to accept that they can take the good stuff that they do and turn that success into super success, we're much more likely to get them to um, be a good performer in other areas as well. And this is the daft thing. We do this with our people, we do it with ourselves. If let's think a project goes 90%, it goes brilliantly well, 10% goes belly up. Yeah. We focus on the 10%, what didn't go so well. I remember doing a presentation in London. I used notes back then, and I went up to the lectern. I dropped my notes on the way up. I finished my presentation, and people came up to me and said, "That was brilliant, Glenn, inspiring, motivational, great." And I said, "Yeah, but I bloody dropped my notes, didn't I? What an idiot I am." And we do this to ourselves, and we do it to other people. So if we think people are capable of great things, and we look for them and work with them to find out what they're good at, and then we do more of them. I mean, let's look at that 90%, 10% again. Someone does 90%, 90% really well. We improve that by 10 percentage points. We get a 9-point gain. Somebody does something not so well, 10% of what they do, and we focus like hell on that. We get the same 10% gain, 10% improvement, but we get a 1% gain. Yet we're hell bent on looking, and we do this in people's development reviews and all sorts. You know, you might have in a annual appraisal or a 6-month appraisal, development review. What do we focus on? The things that didn't go well, typically. So for me, appreciation is the most underrated, probably one of the most powerful things that we can do as leaders. It's got to be genuine. It's got to be specific and authentic. Don't just blow smoke at people. I often challenge this one because when we talk about appreciation, some people will say to me, "Yeah, Glenn, but we can do too much of it," and I disagree with them because. And one of the examples when I've worked in the States, you know, they are good at appreciating in the States, but I challenge them as to the level at which they appreciate. Because when they say great job, I challenge them quite hard on that.
Yeah.
It's just empty words. Why was it a great job? What specifically did that person bring to the situation? What is it? What qualities have they got that we can do more of so we take success to super success?
Yeah, I think you're so right. And I'd love everybody here to ask themselves this question. If I knew that I could have everybody in my company who I interact with going home today feeling valued, what do I need to go and say to them? You know, because how many people go home at the end of every day feeling valued, especially, I don't know how to phrase it. I'm never good at this, but the people who are at the lower levels in the organization, the people who are doing the jobs that we almost take for granted, be it sweeping the floor, being it coming in and picking up the rubbish, whatever it is. How many of those people go home at the end of every day feeling valued? How much could you impact their lives by helping them feel noticed, helping them feel valued? So when they go home at the end of the day, they might feel happier, they might treat their partner better, their children better. You know, please don't underestimate the impact that you can have. Now, I just would like somebody here to type something up on here. Patrick, you've said this one hit hard for me. I'm really curious to know what the one was. So to see whether we can build on it or anything. Maybe not, but it would be great if you could just make it a little clearer. I think, Sherry, you said as well, such a great point. It's not easy for us to know quite which bits that is in case there's anything we can add on to it. So, yeah, Glenn, I agree with you. I think if everybody could really begin to recognize that focusing on people's strengths, however tiny, and with our children, that can make such a difference. That was what you clearly did with Amy when she came back, not done so well in her rehearsal, as it were, and yet done brilliantly on the other. All you focused on was the other. And that of itself then got her to the point where she said, right, if I'm going to do this, I need to bring the others in as well, which is great. So important.
And I think the other thing with appreciation, I mean, all of the stuff that we learn on your program It takes practice. And the thing with appreciation is we've got opportunities every single day in our life. We've got opportunities to appreciate the stuff that goes on around us. So don't just leave it with your teams and the people that work for you. Look for the things that are worthy of appreciation in everyday life. I did it with the cleaner at the gym. I do an exercise class on bikes every week, and the bikes are horrible when I come off them. They're all dripping wet, and this poor lady goes and cleans every single bike. There's 27 of them. I've counted them. So I made the point of going to see her and said, you know what? I just want to say thank you, because not only do you keep these nice and clean so we can jump back on them, but we're approaching winter now, and you're actually keeping us safe from the flu, perhaps COVID. So I just want to say thank you. And this massive smile came across her face. I'm probably the only person who's said thank you to her in a long time. I guess nobody's done it in her business for a long, long time. That night when I left through the turnstile, she gave me a big wave. We've had a couple of conversations since. I now know she's from Nigeria, got 2 kids. Hopefully, again, that's give get. I focused on what I can give. Hopefully, she's gone home feeling a little bit brighter about herself.
Yeah, I mean, I love that story because I think that epitomizes being able to look for things, look for opportunities where you can give something to another human being so that they feel that they've had a better day, so that they feel a little bit more positive. I think it's so incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. So, Glenn, we've got another 15 minutes, so I think that there must be another story you can share. I know that you've got something important you'd like to share at the end, but I'm certain that we can add something else before. What else do you think would be really valuable for people here that you could share?
Okay. What I'd like to share is about the importance of people and taking them on the journey with us rather than telling them, involving them. And I'm going to do this through a story if I can, because I think there's great power in stories. And this is back in the day when I was an account manager for Anglian Water Group. And I used to look after some of their big industrial customers. And one of the things I used to do was I used to ask them, can you spare me 1 hour to take me around your factory or premises so I can see what you do, so I get a better understanding of you and your needs? And I went round this one company and they were producing bags of salad for the UK supermarkets. And when I went into the production hall, there was a conveyor belt system. Food was falling off the conveyor belts onto the floor and it was being washed down the drain. I mean, it was ridiculous. The staff members on site were literally using a hose, almost like a fire hose, and chasing peas around the floor. It was that ridiculous. And we had a conversation with the production team, or the production director rather, and he invested some money. He agreed that that was ridiculous because their energy and their carbon and their impact was massive. Their water bills were huge. So they decided that what they would do, they'd install some skips so that this stuff that fell off the conveyor belts would get picked up manually and get put into the skips. They could actually sell that as a byproduct for biomass plants. They installed some jet wash guns so that they could wash the production hall down, the type of thing you get in a car wash, a hand car wash. And they put in some procedures where the staff could only clean down the production hall at set times of the day. Now, their water consumption went down. However, we were monitoring, as their water company, we monitored their water consumption. It went down for about 3 or 4 months, and then it came back up. And it didn't just come back to where it was, it went way above. And here's what went on. So I'm a very curious guy. I said, can I have another wander around your premises? And I couldn't believe what I saw. In the production hall, 2 police traffic cones with the jet wash guns stuck in the top, with the handles permanently taped up so the jet wash guns were on all of the time. Produce was falling off the conveyor belt onto the floor and it was washing down the drain. The staff had automated the cleanup process. They didn't have to chase the peas around the floor. It was getting washed down the drain. Now, this is the point of this story, okay? That business was trying to win a contract with Marks and Spencer. Now, Marks and Spencer have an environmental policy called Plan A, and you have to prove that you are being as water, energy, and carbon efficient as possible. So that's why they put those processes in place. If the leadership team had gone to the production hall staff and said, guys, we're trying to win the contract for Marks and Spencers. If you knew that there were things we could do differently on the production hall to reduce our water, energy, and carbon impact, what is it that you think we should be doing? And I would suggest to you that if they'd done that, they'd have got buy-in, people taking responsibility and ownership, and they'd have got sustainable change. That's not what they did. So it went pear-shaped. They got a reduction for a while, but the people hadn't been brought into that new way of working. It was forced upon them. They understood it, but they didn't like it. They found a workaround. You've got to get that balance between people and processes.
And the interesting thing is, when you tell that story, it's so obvious that the people weren't involved, and that's what, and they knew that further up they weren't listened to anyway. All they knew was that instructions were coming down, so they weren't part of any decision making. It's interesting. It's one of the challenges that we see in so many clients that we go into, that decision authority is in what it's not the right word, but in the wrong place. All decisions go up. People don't feel that they have the opportunity to make a decision, and sure as hell, people are not being asked to think for themselves. And if somebody had just said to them, if you knew that part of getting this Marks and Spencer's role means that energy efficiency, water efficiency is key, how might you plan to do this differently? But nobody'd even asked them that question.
Absolutely. And that's why it was not sustainable.
I mean, that's really absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. So unfortunately, Patrick hasn't come back to me, so I don't know what the heck it was that he thought that the one was that hit hard for him. No doubt he'll email us later. Love that question. Who's taking responsibility? Yeah, okay, good. But he hasn't come back.
Yeah, well, happy to get any emails out as well, Penny. So if anybody wants to email you or or both of us, that would be great.
Yes. Also, just to say, please recognize this is the first time that I've chosen to have a conversation with actually one of the people who work closely with us. And as you heard, he has actually delivered, is it over 65 programs?
Involved with. I've observed some pilots, but yeah, 65 programs I've been involved with. Delivered a huge amount. Online as well. I should mention that I do some of this online. So you mentioned New Zealand, done China, done Belgium, been all over the world virtually as well as face to face.
Out of curiosity, Glenn, how do you consider that the virtual program impacts in any way differently, because it is slightly different from the live program? What impact do you feel that has?
It still has a huge impact. Absolutely. Even the introductions have a huge impact, even though it's virtual. The difficulty virtually, the only difference is that it's harder to make the link between the various models because you haven't got them displayed around the room and you're not able to wander between them. That's the real challenge in the virtual. But it's still a great program. People get time to watch your videos, think about it, reflect, come along with great questions. So it's a really powerful way of learning.
Yeah, I have to say it is amazing. And for those of you who don't know, it's now been transcribed and is subtitled in Chinese. And the amazing Christine has trained 4 people in China how to deliver the virtual program. And we have somebody coming over from China. She's actually going to be staying with me. She's coming over from China so that she can do the live program and become trained to take it live to China, which we're really excited about. That really is a bit special. So, Glenn, I want to first of all just say thank you. We've got a few minutes left. I'd like you to decide what you would like to share as a wind up that would really leave people inspired.
Okay, thanks, Pen, and thanks again for having me here. I want you to think about what I would leave people with thinking about is their influence. Now, and the time that we have. Okay, so planet Earth, 365 days to go around the sun. That's a year. 225 million years to go around our solar system. And Earth's been here for about 4.3 billion years. If I'm lucky, and I hope I live into my 90s, that's quite a short space of time. So when I moved into my current house, I remember when I introduced myself to my neighbors, there was one guy, when I asked him how he was, and he's still like this. How are you doing? I'm okay. I'm getting by. I'm plodding on, you know, battling on, surviving. So that's one of my neighbors. In fact, I was gardening at the weekend and I asked him how he was doing. He says, "Yeah, I'm still here. I'm surviving." And then I want to look at my previous neighbor, a chap called Richard. Richard and I were great friends. And one night I was due to go out with Richard in Newcastle. And it was going to be Hawaiian shirt night. He was having his friends coming up from Manchester. And I cancelled last minute. I bailed because I didn't have a Hawaiian shirt. I mean, what would people think of me out in a Hawaiian shirt? I didn't want to be seen to be looking ridiculous. So I bailed. I didn't go. There was no grudges. And I waved farewell to Richard as he got into his taxi. Big smile on his face as usual. Next morning, I had a knock on the door about 7 a.m. And I didn't know at the time, but when they came into the house, it was two police officers. And Richard had been found in Newcastle. Unfortunately, he had died. Had fallen into the River Tyne. And it was a couple of days later, we discovered what had happened. He'd gone outside for a cigarette and the fire exit door had shut behind him. And he was on a high level balcony. And despite banging on the door, he couldn't get back into the nightclub. So he chose to try and jump to an adjoining building that also had a balcony. And very, very sadly, he didn't make it. Now, if half an hour before Richard had gone out for his cigarette, someone had said to him, "What you got planned for tomorrow or next week or next 6 months?" He'd have told you about golfing around the world, lots of travel, finding someone to settle down with and having a family. He thought he had all the time in the world. The truth of the matter was he didn't have 24 hours. He just didn't know it. And then there's my neighbor. I've been in this house 20 years now. For 20 years, he's been saying, "I'm surviving. I'm plodding along. I'm getting there." So I want you to see this time glass. Imagine, which way to do this? This stuff down here is our past. That's what's gone before. This is our future. We can't see what's at the top of this. We absolutely know what's been behind us. We can't put this back up there and have it again. The only thing that we've got absolute influence of is this point right in the middle, the here and now. And we can all choose to be and choose what we want that to be. So, leadership, love a little more, hate a little less, get curious about people, make it more about them and their thoughts than it is about yours. Don't react to things, widen that gap. Don't let stuff wind you up. Choose to think about how you respond to things and respond in a really positive way. Look for the good in things that people do. You'll find it. Believe people are capable of great things. Don't let stuff go past you that's gone on, that's been brilliant, that is worthy of appreciation, and you don't make sure you appreciate it. Lean into stuff. Try stuff that scares you. Start doing things before you're ready. You'll discover some new things about yourself, hidden strengths, perhaps some weaknesses too, but let's focus on the strengths. So each and every one of us has the power to influence. The minute we're speaking and talking to another human being, we are indeed influencing. So remember, it's about the here and now. That's it from me.
Glenn, that was absolutely inspirational. I have enjoyed this conversation. Honestly, one of the best that we've had. And I'd love people to comment, to say what they think. Please email either Glenn or I, penny@thelivingleader.com, glenn@thelivingleader.com. Please just remember it's Glenn, double N, which is a slightly more unusual way of spelling it. So please email us if there's any other questions. if you're interested at all in finding out more about the programs, if you're people who've never attended, just email us and we'll be really, really happy to share anything with you. And Glenn, I can't thank you enough. And you're so right. The only time that we can make change is in the present moment. We can't make it in the past. We can't make it in the future. So if we really knew that there's something we can do right now that will impact our lives or somebody else's right now, what might we choose to do in this moment? Glenn, thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.